All right. Hello, everyone. This is John Stuart. I'm back this month with another episode of Bitcoin and the Arts. Today is going to be our second episode with a guest interviewee. Last month, I had Bruce Pond from Ascribe.io. We had a really interesting conversation. You should go check that out if you'd like to listen to more. But today, I have Dustin from BTCArtGallery.com. He's the creator. What would you call yourself?
Curator, I think, is the technical term.
Okay, yeah, so he's the curator. He runs the website, which has a lot of great images related to Bitcoin, and we've known about them for a while. I think we may have mentioned them on the main podcast or something before, but yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff on there, and it's worth checking out. So, Dustin, my first question is, well, I probably talked about this a little bit in my first couple episodes, just as an intro to the segment that I've been doing, but I haven't talked about it in a while, so I figured I'd ask you, and maybe you can help me do my job a little bit. Bitcoin and art don't necessarily seem like two things that would go together, I think, to a lot of people. So can you tell me why you think they go together, why you think art is important for Bitcoin, and why Bitcoiners should care about art?
Ooh, that's a tricky question. Well, I could tell you why I think so. I don't know. I'm not sure why everyone would think the same way, but I think that it mostly comes out of the actual absence of everything else in Bitcoin. Right now, since it's so new that literally nothing has been done, you could say, in Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. Like everything somebody does here is a new thing, right? And so I think that the art is a natural expression of people trying to come to terms with it. Because some people are artistic, right?
Yeah.
So they use... When I was first trying to understand Bitcoin, it was extremely difficult. I think everybody has this problem when they first get going, right? It's extremely abstract. It's a lot of math. It's a lot of computer code. And for anyone who's not familiar with that's a lot. But definitely some people have taken the time. Definitely some people have investigated it. And for the artistic people putting all that work in, I think that fuels that part of their brain when trying to figure it out, and then they have to express themselves some way after they figure it out. And I think that's what the art in Bitcoin, I think that's where it comes from. It comes from the levels of understanding people are able to reach about the Bitcoin itself, about like how it operates and how we operate with it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that it's, for them, it's a way of helping them understand what they've been learning about. And I guess, like, by extension, then, when they put that art out there for everyone to see, then they can help other people get to the same point that they are and understand things about that. Would you say that's a fair point?
Well, that's definitely how it's worked for me. Since I started making the gallery, it's vastly improved my understanding of what's going on and the community and how they feel about things. So I would say I've definitely been on the receiving end of the art, in that I got the usefulness of their work. I'm not sure how much any of the art actually helped them understand, though. I'm not an artist myself, so okay. I can't really say that. But I definitely think that's the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to mention, because most of the discussion around art and Bitcoin, and this is myself included, a lot of the things that I've talked about are ways in which Bitcoin can help art, but it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of people talking about how art can help Bitcoin. And so I think it's cool, like, to see places like your site and just anywhere where you might find art, that it actually is helping Bitcoin. It's teaching people, spreading awareness about it, and helping people to understand, like you said, the way people feel about it. And what directions it's going in.
And also that the space is not impossible to understand either. Like that's so since I'm looking at my gallery right now and I'm seeing stuff in here that reminds me that there are so many different perspectives on the issues of Bitcoin that that's really useful, because sometimes we feel like there's a single narrative, or I feel that like sometimes the media, the Bitcoin media, gives us a single narrative, a single story, and the art can sometimes reflect multiple angles of the story if it's done well.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think this may have been something that I had mentioned in an earlier episode, but in a lot of things that we've seen throughout history, art has become a way to be sort of representative of a certain group of people or certain ideas that are out there, and it kind of becomes a gateway for people to learning about other things. Like I don't know if I could think of an example. I guess like songs can do that. I'm sure I know the same is true of images. I just can't think of any examples right now, but like take a song like Blackbird by the Beatles, where it becomes sort of a way for people to represent the Black rights movement in the 60s. I think there's all kinds of examples like that. So it's the same is true of Bitcoin, would you say?
Yeah, I understand that. Actually, there's been a plethora of Bitcoin songs. Actually, I have them in the gallery. They just don't properly show up because I haven't figured out how to format my main page correctly yet. But there's like 60 or something songs in my gallery now. Cool. About Bitcoin.
So let's talk about your gallery a little bit. So when did you start doing this?
I got really interested. I heard about Bitcoin, like many people did. I had heard about Bitcoin just through my media channels, but I hadn't really paid attention. And then I eventually went to Twitter, and I was roaming around on Twitter, and I was seeing some of the images that were passing around there, and I thought that was really interesting. So I started saving some, and then eventually I got to the R Bitcoin at Reddit, and I was searching through the all-time images, the all-time top posts of R Bitcoin, and at that time the top posts were actually a couple of memes, and I thought that was really interesting that this community had voted up memes over technical pieces and such. So I made me realize that these people, even though they might be really ahead of me, right, that they were not impossible to understand if memes were their most favorite thing on our Bitcoin. And so I just started saving them. I had a folder. I just saved a whole bunch of pictures originally, and I was looking around, and then I noticed, it was probably months later, I noticed that nobody was collecting or sharing the art, the memes and such. I mean, they were sharing them, but they were not. There was nowhere I could go. I was actually looking for a place to find Bitcoin wallpapers, and there was no place I could type it into Google and I could get like a couple, but there were, after some searching, I found that I was missing a lot of them. Most people don't tag their stuff correctly.
Yeah.
They type they type something, and then they post it or they share it or whatever. And so I started after I got my couple of wallpapers, I tweeted them out, and those were really popular tweets for me. And then I sat around thinking about it, and I realized that this space is needs help. This is the part where I felt like I was trying to think of how I could contribute to the Bitcoin space, because I could tell people about Bitcoin, which is what I think the majority of people do, and I have certainly. But then that didn't really give me that sense of really contributing to the project, and so I eventually came across the idea of making the gallery as my way of contributing back and trying to add something into the Bitcoin space. And so I literally just started tweeting out and building this this site, and that's pretty much how it happened.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Yeah. So I liked how you brought up the memes there, because I guess that, for better or for worse, that's just become kind of an integral part of the sort of internet culture that we have now. And that's obviously, there's a lot of overlap between internet culture and Bitcoin culture. They're kind of...
There's 100% overlap.
Yeah, yeah. Good point. Yeah, you can't really use internet or Bitcoin without the internet. So yeah, they're inseparably linked. And yeah, I guess it's just that old statement about pictures being worth 1,000 words is true. And even for something like a meme, where it's maybe considered lowbrow or I don't know, simple and not very sophisticated, there can be a lot of powerful images, whether it be something humorous or something clever or something thought-provoking. And yeah, so I think it's cool to see that those are the highest upvoted. A lot of the highest upvoted posts happen to be memes. Like it or not, they're kind of just a powerful form of communication right now.
They are, yeah, and a lot of times, I think memes are looked down upon because the idea that anybody could do it takes away from the fact that to make a good meme is actually quite difficult. There's lots of bad memes. There are very few good memes. And there's rules you have to actually follow with memes. They're rather strict rules. There's like if you go to knowyourmeme.com, the site where they historically categorize all this stuff, it's really strict. It's all just history and context. But you make a well-crafted meme, and the word meme is going to probably confuse people. Because they probably know what it means, but they probably don't know where it's from. Yeah. Yeah, that's, let's see, that's from Richard Dawkins.
Yeah.
And that's like the 90s or something when he invented that word?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Right, and then I cannot actually remember the original reason that he crafted the word. It was just for any sort of virally shared content, right?
Yeah, I think the idea was culturally inherited traits. So like the way you inherit blue eyes, that's a gene. And I guess it's like if you inherit some other more, I guess you could say like metaphysical or like an ideology, cultural standards, things like that. It's basically like an equivalent of a gene for that. And I think he used it to describe religion and other things like that.
Yeah, okay. I should read what he actually did that. That'd be an interesting read to actually read his original piece on that.
Yeah.
But the memes are certainly not the only thing I've got here, even though they are definitely predominant. There's a lot of actual classical art, oddly enough, in the Bitcoin space. Paintings, and I'm actually updating the gallery right now to have a better one. I have a New York Times crossword puzzle in here.
Okay.
And I always thought that things like that are very interesting. That, like, in that sense, I'm performing like a historical service in a way that this crossword puzzle in the New York Times that featured Bitcoin. That's going to interest somebody not in the next 2 years. That's going to interest somebody 20 years from now when they're writing their master's thesis.
Yeah.
And they're looking for, critical data points or pictures to illuminate some big essay they have on economics maybe or something. And then they'll be able to pull out this little crossword puzzle pick, stick it in there, and use it to apply context to the time, right? And say, look, this is how it infiltrated society. It appeared in things like the New York Times crossword puzzle, example A.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I guess to go back to the memes for a second, like you said, I think they are kind of sometimes looked down upon, and I think that's unfair in a way. The way I view memes is kind of like a futuristic, I guess not futuristic because it's present, but a modernized, more advanced form of folk art. And
yeah, that's a really good way to think of that.
Yeah, and I think like the point you just brought up about the this being almost more of a catalog for the future. It's interesting that I think now there's a lot more appreciation for folk art of the past, and that's like anthropologists and ethnomusicologists and people like that study folk music, folk art to try to learn more about the past.
Ethnomusicologists?
Yeah, it's kind of a nerdy term, I guess. Just people who study cultures through their music.
That's an awesome word. I've never even heard that word before. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, then exactly. This is exactly who I made that for, is ethno-imagecologists.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent is.
I don't either. And this would be not ethnic, this would be cultural, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the word for that one.
Yeah, I guess we could just say anthropologists as a catch-all.
Sure, yeah, because I'm thinking of the guys who study those pieces of Greek art and such, trying to figure out how the Greeks lived their lives back in the day by studying their art.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I remember I actually watched a presentation probably a couple of years ago. I should see if I can find it again, but it was something like an anthropological study of YouTube, and YouTube isn't that old,
wow.
but already people are starting to see the value of studying YouTube videos and the culture and the community there to try to understand what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I made my gallery for, is for the Bitcoiners to be able to see what is going on in their own art world today. So that would definitely apply later on, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So,
did you see one you liked, by the way?
There's a lot of great stuff on here. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm past 1,000 pieces now.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like a lot of it, to be honest. As far as favorites, yeah, I don't know. What are some of your favorite pieces that you found, or are there certain artists that seem to consistently produce things that you like?
Well, I've seen a lot now. I think I've seen it all, because anytime I see a new piece, I put it in here, and I'm not collecting so much more older stuff now, because I think I've got it all. But I do love, oddly enough, the photos people take of things in the historical sense, when they take a picture and they don't necessarily understand why they're taking a picture and sharing it, because the thing they're taking a picture of is incredibly boring. I'm looking at an example here of someone took a picture of the white paper itself, so they just printed out Satoshi's white paper, right, and put it on a red velvet background. And this is at the Money Museum in Zurich, Switzerland. And so one of the Reddit users visited it, saw the printed out white paper in the museum, and took a picture. And functionally, that is completely useless. Having a photograph of a pile of Satoshi's white papers serves absolutely no purpose, right?
Yeah.
But he took the picture because it was in a museum, and the museum felt that it was important enough to display the printed paper and put it on a background, right?
Yeah.
And that's the history part of it, where there's steps in this. So there's a museum curator, and he is presented with Bitcoin, and he's a money museum, okay, money museum in Zurich, Switzerland. So I see this picture, I imagine first that the curator of the museum, his job is he doesn't understand Bitcoin. He doesn't know what Bitcoin is, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody's like, oh, digital money, right? And he's like, all right, what? And then they point him at the white paper, right? And he's like, all right, I'll put this in the museum. So he literally prints it out and puts it in the museum, right? And then someone walks in and takes a picture. That directness, I enjoy that. There's no, it's simple.
Yeah.
It's people expressing themselves in simple ways, and trying to communicate in simple ways. And that's I like that, because in Bitcoin things get so complicated in the tech terms, right? it's always nice to go back to that first moment where you know nothing about Bitcoin and imagine someone's first introduction is just staring at the actual white paper and being like, what? You know?
Yeah. It makes it a little bit more real, too. There's a connection to real life. Seeing something like that in a museum, it kind of takes it off the internet for a second and brings it into reality.
Yeah, exactly. I always enjoy when people take Bitcoin off of the internet and try to put it into the real world in a way.
Yeah, that's cool.
It is cool.
Yeah. Let's see. We're at about 20 minutes, so I mean, if there's other things that you want to bring up, by all means do. If not, I can move on to my last couple questions.
My friend here gave me a really good point I should raise. So he suggested we discuss the difference between art that spurs adoption from the general public versus the art that's insular to our community.
Okay.
And that is a really good point because so I see both in my gallery. I see the art that is made to try to reach out and get people's attention about Bitcoin. I definitely see that. But there is also much, much more art. I'd say the vast majority of art in my collection has been insular, right? In the sense that it makes no sense unless you know a lot about Bitcoin already, and you're already in Bitcoin, right? And in the communities and hearing the discussions. Like, for instance, the inside jokes would be very difficult to get, like whales, right? Yeah. So there's some whale art, right?
Yeah.
And the whale art's great. It always brings a smile to my face because how the community responds and the bear whale, remember that?
Yeah, I've seen that one, yeah.
Yeah, there were several pieces on the bear whale, and that is obviously very insular. There's no way. I remember you remember when we those articles came out trying to explain the bear whale to the normal public?
I don't think I ever saw any of those, to be honest.
There was one of them on CoinDesk and one on Cointelegraph, and they were trying to explain the joke to like the casual Bitcoiner, and it came off very weird.
Yeah. So I just Googled it, and there's actually a CNBC article on that.
Oh,
so
CNBC, really? And hopefully, Google searching Bitcoin art will be easier now too, because my site indexes everything to Google.
Yeah, it's
so
kind of a central hub.
Hopefully, if somebody's looking for a specific painting, they'll be able to type it into Google and not even have to worry about coming to my site because the image will pop up itself.
Yeah. So, do you think even with those more kind of insular pieces, like we've been talking about, where it's kind of unless you already know things, you're not going to really understand what it's trying to get across. Do you think that that still helps bring people in because it kind of raises it gives them something to dig into that they're trying to figure out now?
Well, I think that now. I didn't originally. Originally, I thought it would alienate people, and that's how the art really changed my own understanding of it. Is because when my friends and family found out what I was doing and they visited my site and they started looking at it, they enjoyed it. And they came back to me, and usually their favorite pieces are the ones that I would think would be the most alienating. But they grasp more than you would think once they have like some basic understanding of Bitcoin. They grasp far more, and I think the things like political cartoons are really great because they're both insular, but they are simple, right?
Yeah.
So they're really literal metaphors usually, right?
Yeah.
Like here's a political cartoon I'm looking at right now, and it could not be more literal, right? About what it's talking about, and yeah, you're right. It helps. It gives people something to dig into. If they don't understand something, they're like the block size debate. I have a great deal of art now about the block size debate in here. And if the word block size debate seemed strange to them, they might Google that. And my experience has been that the more interested someone is in a piece, the more likely they are to try to look up that context or ask me about that context.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you're right. I didn't think that originally, though, and I'm sure many people probably don't think that all of the art, especially the insular art, helps bring people in. But I think you're right that the people try to dig into things that they don't understand when they like something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's maybe just a testament to how important art is to getting an idea across, that it can interest people more than a technical post on Reddit or even something like the white paper, maybe.
Yeah, my appreciation for art in our normal society has gone up amazingly so. I really appreciate it. I look at normal art now that I see in our society totally differently now that I've been immersed in it in this way. And I think I see the function it serves between people a lot better now. I'm more aware of it. I'm more conscious of it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So anything else that you want to talk about?
Well, I guess just the philosophy of the Bitcoin space. Do you think that the art will ultimately move us forward, or do you think it will hold us still? Because as we see with like the Bitcoin block size debate, which is going on right now, there's parties which want to move forward and there's parties which want to stand still, and both produce art, both are expressing themselves, and I feel that the art favors conservatism in the Bitcoin space. Even though that seems like the art would be more liberal and progressive, I feel that the Bitcoin plays a conservative role in the space because what the adoption of a more like progressive stance in Bitcoin would be so dangerous from the arguments that the other side has raised, right? That people are tepid about it, right?
Yeah.
And so do you think over time that the art will push people like the developers to take different stances, right? Do you think it'll reach them, or do you think, being that they're the developers, they will ignore the art because they feel like it's commentary on their work?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think also...
I'd like to point out that almost none of the core devs follow me.
Yeah.
Only like 2 do. And they never favorite anything. They never retweet anything.
Yeah.
So I really feel like I'm swing and a miss with those guys.
Yeah, well, that could partly be due to the kind of the predisposition towards like internet art or digital art as memes and being sort of a lesser form of art somehow. Maybe there's a little bit of that in there.
Oh yeah,
but
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's also interesting how you brought up the tension between like being more liberal or being more conservative, because being a conservative Bitcoin user means a completely different thing than being conservative somewhere else.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. That's really interesting. I don't know that I have a definitive answer to your question, but I do think that
I don't have an answer either. So
yeah,
it's a good question.
I do think that I would tend to say that art is beneficial no matter who's predominantly making the art, because art is so much more immediate. I think people are more willing to listen to an argument from the other side if they see an image or something like that first, because it hits them immediately, and I think maybe they go into it with less predisposition to not agree with it, maybe.
Oh, so it helps open it up to them.
Yeah, I think
position.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a humanizing thing, where when people look at an image, they don't necessarily see a person that they don't agree with who's telling them something. They kind of see the image for what it is first, and then that other stuff comes in. Not to say that people aren't dismissive of images and stuff like that as well, but I think there can be more of a chance to break through. And so, that being said, I think it's better if both sides are using art as a way to communicate. So if one side is predominantly favoring that, and the other side is kind of ignoring it, maybe it's not so helpful. But I think it has potential.
I definitely agree with the idea that both sides benefit if they use it. Unfortunately, the most reused images in Bitcoin are those Cassius coins, which I think have damned our community because those physical Bitcoins, right? Those images we keep seeing on the news sites, they love to use them.
Yeah.
That is really damning to the space because, as we all know, there is no such thing as a truly physical Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the reuse over and over and over again by the major media sources of they ignore all this art and they just keep reposting piles of Cassius coins, right?
Yeah.
And I think that does not serve us at all. If Coinbase led with some of these pieces here, some of these paintings or something, I think it would have way more, like you were saying, a powerful impact. People would see that first. It might open their minds and they might see something directly and then choose to read it in a different light, right? It might be more malleable to the points.
Yeah.
So I guess the one thing I could say if anyone's listening to this, don't use those images. Don't use those stupid physical coin images of piles of fake plastic coins or even real gold coins. That's not the right way to be doing this, I don't think.
Yeah. It kind of doesn't. It kind of goes against everything that Bitcoin's supposed to be in a way.
It does. I felt that since I first started seeing those things show up in all the articles.
Yeah, I think the idea of physical Bitcoins is kind of a cool novelty thing, but I've never really thought about it until you brought it up, that it actually might have more of a detrimental effect to people's perception of it.
My mom, the first time I told her about Bitcoin, she went and looked it up online and then sent me a thing, and she's like, "Is this a Bitcoin?" And I'm like, "No, Mom, no, unfortunately that is not a Bitcoin." And she's like, "Really? Are you sure? Because it says Bitcoin on it, and it's a coin."
Yeah, that's a funny story, which that could bring me to my last question, unless you still have any things that you want to put on the table.
No, I've already given us 2 unanswerable questions.
Yeah,
better.
That's good. So if anyone's listening and you have any input, let us know.
Yeah, I would love to hear back. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. This will be on our site on youmeandbtc.com or ymb.tc for the short link. So you'll be able to leave comments there, but also, we're both on Twitter. Would you care to give your Twitter handle?
It's BTC Art Gallery also.
All right, yeah, and I'm JJ_Stuart. That's my Twitter handle. And like I said, this will be on the site, and you can comment there as well. But if you have any input on the things that we've discussed, let us know.
Or any more art. Yeah,
that as well. There's always room for more art, and I think both of us have come to the agreement that more people should be talking about art in Bitcoin. It can be really important. So before we go, Dustin, we always make a habit of asking our interviewees to share a personal story. It can be Bitcoin related, or it could be related to your gallery. We ask for maybe something interesting or cool, or sometimes we've gotten funny stories about people getting... We had a story, we interviewed Andreas Antonopoulos, and he told us a story about how he was selling Bitcoin for cash, because he's done that as a way to get people into Bitcoin, and somebody paid him in counterfeit bills. So we've had all kinds of different stories. Yeah, it's pretty funny that even someone like Andreas could get scammed in a way, like such an old school way. It's kind of ironic. But yeah, if you have any kind of personal stories that you'd like to share, go for it.
Oh, I'm going to have to think about that for a moment.
Yeah, it could be any people that you've met.
Let me think about it for a second here. Oh, that's a really good one. Ending with a personal story is a really good one, by the way.
Okay, yeah, thanks. We thought so too, it's been a mainstay of all of our interviews since we started.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a personal story. So I changed my major because of Bitcoin. I was originally a literature student, and then I started studying computer science. And while I was in computer science, that's when I found out about Bitcoin. And I remember I went to my I went to my instructor, and I pointed it out to him, and he had a really negative reaction to it at the time, and I took his word for it. I was like, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. I'll just, leave it, right? Just a crazy idea. And then later on in the class, I did my final presentation. It was a computer ethics class, that one. I did my final presentation on WikiLeaks because that had just happened.
Yeah.
And he flunked me for talking about it. Yeah, I even got his permission and everything to write the paper on it. But he gave me a big old D on it, saying that it was off topic. And I got other professors to review it too, so I know that the paper was good. Because he's a conservative guy. He works for the military. Okay. So he was against WikiLeaks the entire time. He thought he was a traitor and such things. And this is WikiLeaks, so the guy's not even American, so he can't use the word traitor, but that's the word he used.
Yeah.
And this is before Edward Snowden or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then at that moment, I lost all instant respect for the man because he let me walk into that one. I mean, I even did a presentation in front of the rest of the class. Afterwards, I walked up and asked him if it was any good. He said it was fine, and he flunked me on it. So at that point, I was sitting around that summer, and I was like, well, I got to either go retake this class and try to get a better grade and not talk about controversial things. And then that summer was the summer I really started looking into Bitcoin. And his initial dismissal of it, right? Actually, it might have been the next summer after that. His initial dismissal of it became my reason to look into it more.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
So then I didn't understand it at all. I didn't understand Bitcoin at all. So I went and switched to economics to become an economics major. And I went and talked to my instructor there, who is the head of our economics department. She was the one teaching intro to economics. And I asked her about Bitcoin. And she was fully supportive of it. She thought it was a good idea, right? She thought it had a fair chance. And that was exactly the opposite of what my other instructor had said, right? And this is an economics professor here, so she's coming at it from a totally different angle, right? She doesn't care about the code at all. She just cares about the supply and demand curve, right?
Yeah.
And so she's the one who explained to me how the price of Bitcoin will go down over time until it reaches a point where it actually fulfills that demand point, right? So she walked me through the supply-demand curve of Bitcoin, which I had never even thought about that until she brought it up. But it really highlighted to me in my own life the disparity in the education system that the computer science had in computer science in schools had become conservative, right?
Yeah.
And that was because of the way that the schools operate their computer science programs. They don't have, hackers running their computer science departments, right?
Yeah.
They have guys who write military submarine software and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they naturally tend towards the conservative. And in the economic side, they're very liberal. They're very progressive because on the economic side, the economic problems in the world have gotten so bad that there are no more simple solutions. There's only radical solutions, right?
Yeah.
And so my professor was willing to say that this radical thing could work because of how bad things are out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I guess we actually have kind of similar stories then, although I am still not an expert on economics. I did start as an English writing major as well.
Oh, you too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
And, I had gotten into Bitcoin the summer after I graduated high school, I guess, and it was more, it was less to do with being interested in economics or being interested in computers than it was the whole ideology behind it. And at the time I was learning about libertarianism and anarcho-capitalism and things like that. And that's kind of more how I got interested in Bitcoin. And that made me interested in computers, and so I ended up switching to information science as a major.
Oh, cool. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, English doesn't look so hot, does it? Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of chances of a good new book changing the world when we have more books than we could ever read already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can call it there. So thank you very much for joining me for this interview and for all your input.
No, thank you for having me. This has been great.
Yeah, it was great. I'd like to thank anyone who's been listening for being a great audience, and I hope to see you next month for the next episode of Bitcoin and the Arts.